You are a psychiatric patient, suffering from severe mania and paranoia, with a strong antisocial tendency. You've just escaped from a mental hospital, but in the next second, you pass through into this tragic-themed literature. Here you're required to selflessly dedicate yourself to everyone until the end, and then use your own death to push the story to its climax. Everyone will come to their senses only after losing you. They'll regret their actions deeply and reminisce about the past they shared with you. Upon hearing this, you smile faintly. First of all, you're a psychiatric patient. Secondly, you quite like this world where, for all the unreasonable events, no one calls the police. To escape from the mental hospital, you've been preparing for days. Just 5 minutes ago, you incapacitated the nurse who came for the rounds and changed into her clothes in a blind spot of the surveillance. Thanks to your perfect disguise, you successfully fled the mental hospital. However, the moment you stepped onto the road, you were hit by a runaway truck. When you woke up again, you became the female protagonist of a sadistic novel. That thing in your head called the system told you that your task in this world was to endure in silence. You had to sacrifice for your indifferent parents, unfaithful boyfriend, and unjust brother. You didn't need to explain because until you died, they would unconditionally believe the fake daughter in the family. But it didn't matter. You just needed to choose to commit suicide when the disappointment accumulated to a certain extent. After your death, all those who had once failed you would turn around and start loving you. You remained silent, not responding. Yet the system, as if completely oblivious, kept shouting excitedly in your mind. Then they'll all have to regret their actions desperately. When they finally realize that the second female lead is the villain and that you, who had been sincerely devoted to them all along, are already dead and gone forever, they'll spend the rest of their lives in pain and tears. Just the thought of it makes you thrilled. You must act wrong now. The more you suffer at the beginning, the deeper their regret will be later. It kept chattering on, completely unaware that your expression had turned impatient. Finally, unable to bear the inner irritation any longer, you picked up the fruit knife on the table without hesitation and stabbed the fake daughter beside you, who was still crying. The blade pierced through her palm, nailing her entire hand firmly to the dining table. She had been about to accuse you of looking down on her and refusing to cut the birthday cake with her. Now, she could no longer maintain her innocent and vulnerable act. Her face twisted horribly. Her shrill scream rang out, her mouth wide open, revealing her throat, as tears and snot flew everywhere. Everyone was stunned by this sudden turn of events. It wasn't until the splattering blood stained half of the tablecloth red that your own brother, standing behind her, finally reacted. He rushed forward and pushed you away. Then he stared at the fake daughter's impaled palm at a loss. In the end, they didn't dare to pull out the knife casually. The dining table and the fake daughter were taken to the hospital together. Before leaving, you looked at your parents and brother with eyes so gloomy that they seemed to drip with darkness, and you happily wiped the cream from your lips. As your bright red tongue licked across, a sense of pleasure welled up from within. It was truly exhilarating, but the system in your head dared not speak. Host, your approach is seriously wrong. Before it could say more, it could only emit a string of garbled code. It failed to realize that you were a psychiatric patient. Both your mind and your heart were like a chaotic sea, where only storms and tsunamis raged. These things that never gave you a moment's peace could easily swallow up that technological parasitic product that kept clamoring in your mind. You had hurt the fake daughter, the apple of the family's eye. Your parents and brother vowed to teach you a lesson, but the fake daughter was seriously injured. Her hand, which she prided herself on as a pianist's hand, was mostly ruined by your act. Your parents stayed by her side constantly, comforting and accompanying her. They didn't give up any hope. They were willing to do whatever it took to make her recover. However, when your palm was deliberately scalded by boiling water from the fake daughter, they didn't put in nearly as much effort. All they needed to do was call a doctor for you in time or let you go out to buy some anti-inflammatory medicine and bandage it up. You wouldn't have been unable to hold a scalpel anymore due to muscle infection from the inflamed wound. And all of this was because the fake daughter told them that you deliberately refused to take the glass of water she offered, trying to embarrass her. So your parents wanted to teach you a lesson. They ignored the fact that the water was hot enough to cause severe burns and insisted that you kneel at home and reflect. You were only allowed to return to your small bedroom in Building B to rest after you fainted from the wound infection. For such a ridiculous reason, you lost your career. And your boyfriend rushed to your home that same night, not to comfort you, but to cheer up the fake daughter, who claimed to be heartbroken by you. And now, upon hearing about your actions at the fake daughter's birthday party, your boyfriend terminated his meeting abroad and took a special flight back overnight. The one who hurts others will have to pay the price. That was the first thing he said to you. The servants in the villa had all been sent away. It seemed they knew what was about to happen. Some of them cast sympathetic glances at you when they left, but there was more of a sense of watching the drama in those eyes. The next moment the door was closed. While your boyfriend was still taking off his belt, you didn't hesitate to take out the vase hidden behind you and smash it over his head. The sight of blood excited your nerves. Your boyfriend fell to the ground. His fair skin aroused your desire to abuse. Without mercy, you picked up the fragments of the vase and scratched his skin, leaving one mark after another. After a long while, your boyfriend woke up in pain. You, unhurriedly, took out the ropes and handcuffs from his coat and tied him up. At this moment, there was fear in your boyfriend's eyes as he looked at you. You grabbed his hair mercilessly and slammed his head against the cold wall. You were in a good mood until his pleading voice grew weak. Then you skillfully took out his car keys and drove him to the secret room in the wilderness. You knew exactly what your boyfriend had planned for you. Over the years, whenever you dared to make the fake daughter unhappy in the slightest, he would punish you. And his ways of abusing were always so monotonous. You had a severe fear of being in enclosed spaces. He had built that prison-like secret room in the desolate outskirts. There was no food or water there. All that accompanied you was the endless darkness. All you could do was keep repenting every day and promise them that you would never go against the fake daughter again, and would never make her unhappy. Only when he showed mercy and unlocked the chains would he let you out. Then, like taming an animal, he would touch the back of your neck and say, "I'm doing this for your own good. You're older than Chanshan. You should learn to be sensible." But now, you were the one who was extremely vicious. When you threw your boyfriend into the secret room, there was even a cruel smile on your face. Under the moonlight, you could clearly see the intense fear on his face. His face contorted horribly. Your positions were almost reversed. He was left with only a little strength, but his words were still harsh. "Break up. I really misjudged you. You're actually this kind of person. Since you were a child, you had hated hearing others say that you were this kind of person. You were like a wild dog that couldn't be defined by others. So you picked up the hammer beside you and slammed it down on his head without mercy. The hammer missed, but he soiled his pants out of fear. That once high and mighty business prodigy now had a large brown stain on his suit pants. The smell in the room became quite unpleasant, but it didn't matter. You could leave easily. You weren't afraid of the police finding this place. According to your observation in this sadistic novel world, there were no police. No matter how outrageous your actions were, these wealthy families always seemed to have all sorts of reasons not to call the police. Besides, your boyfriend was the owner of this secret room. Now that you had locked him up, he would somehow find a way out. As you expected, your boyfriend was found by his assistant on the third day and escaped. But he didn't call the police. He just didn't dare to come looking for you for a short time. Meanwhile, your family also received the bad news that the fake daughter's hand could no longer be cured. That future renowned pianist had now fallen. Hearing this, you were overjoyed and specially prepared a table full of delicious food waiting for them to come back. Unfortunately, your parents didn't appreciate it. As soon as they came back, they overturned the table of food. Your father even stepped forward and slapped you hard. You pressed your tongue against your gums, feeling the smell of blood in your mouth, and slowly laughed. They made you kneel as punishment and wanted to send you back to the ancestral house to deal with you. They said you were an ungrateful person, and that they shouldn't have recognized you in the first place. Yes, when you came back to this family, you were already quite old. At that time, because your adoptive parents had passed away, you had no choice but to come in Ranchin, hoping that they would support you through your studies. You also vowed that after getting a job, you would repay them. But they all thought you had bad intentions and were trying to climb the social ladder, especially the fake daughter. She spread rumors at school, saying that you were the daughter of the family's nanny. She also said that you had stripped naked to seduce the 50-year-old housekeeper for 1,000 yuan. And no matter how absurd these words were, your elder brother would testify that they were true. You had a hard time in this family. After going to college, you never took a single penny from them. But even so, they still thought you had ulterior motives. Now everyone finally decided to judge you. But it didn't matter. Because you clearly saw that after they were tired of scolding, they all drank the pot of water that you had placed in the most conspicuous position. At night, you knelt in the hall, keeping an eye on the time as they all fell down one by one. You had already turned off all the surveillance cameras in the house. This time, you didn't spare the servants in the villa either. Because you knew that all along they had been informing your boyfriend. They were your boyfriend's informants and supporters of the fake daughter. When you were in this house, they always deliberately appeared in front of you, down on you. They would say things like you didn't deserve it. They were deliberately guiding and isolating you, hoping that you would choose between dying and backing down. Your original self lived up to their expectations and suffered from severe depression. At this moment, you slowly stood up from the hall, stretched your sore legs, and prepared to do something big. You weren't in a hurry to deal with your prey. Instead, you went to the kitchen and admired all the cutlery. You were extremely excited. Since you couldn't decide which tool to use, you gave them a chance. So you tied them all up. You were going to play a game with them. These people had all been drugged by you. They were completely powerless. Before they had the ability to escape, they had to tell a truth about you that had been distorted in the past every 10 minutes. The one who told the truth could be safe in this round, while the one who was identified would be punished. In the resentful gazes of everyone, you asked the first question. Were you really just accidentally lost back then? When this question was asked, your brother, who was sitting on the ground and cursing, showed a trace of guilt on his face, but he still spoke with self-righteousness. Otherwise, you're a troublemaker. You insisted on playing with human traffickers, making mom and dad feel guilty for not being able to find you all these years. How dare you bring this up? The more he talked, the more excited he became, and he even believed his own words. Standing on the moral high ground, he angrily scolded you. But you already knew the whole truth through the system in your head when you first came here. It was a pity he was lying. So in his panicked eyes, you slowly held his little finger and bent it in the opposite direction. The sound of the dislocated knuckle and your brother's scream rang out. After all, you were just a young girl. Such a thing as bending someone's finger made you feel strained. Under his terrified gaze, you took out a large wrench, pliers, and a scalpel from your toolbox. Your brother started to apologize, crying bitterly. I was wrong. I didn't take good care of you, which gave the human traffickers a chance. Mom and Dad left you to me every day when they were starting their business. I didn't even have my own time. You were just impatient. A shrill scream sounded. This time it was his left thumb that was broken, just because he still refused to tell the truth. The dislocated finger quickly became chongxie, swollen and purple. The fake daughter beside him was shaking like a leaf out of fear. Your parents looked at you with hatred as they watched their beloved son being abused. They kept cursing. Until you picked the third finger, your brother, who was lying on the ground covered in cold sweat, finally spoke in a weak voice. I sold you. His face showed shock. Even the fake daughter was so surprised that she forgot to shake. For a moment, everyone's eyes were on your brother. But he said viciously, raising his head and yelling at you. What's my fault? I was just a child. Just because Mom and Dad didn't have time for their business, I had to be your nanny? Do you know how much I hate you? I used the 200 yuan from selling you to play in the internet cafe for a whole day. That was the happiest day of my childhood. Your worth is only this much. After saying this, his gaze darkened, and his voice changed due to the unbearable pain. You left. Why did you come back? Our life was fine. Everything got messed up because you came back. You should just disappear and rot in the garbage. Then he closed his eyes, resigned to the revenge you would bring. Opposite him, your mother's expression became more and more complicated. She had always been proud of her son, thinking that he had the most happy and perfect family in the world. But now, the despicability and ugliness shown by her son were beyond her acceptance. Finally, she turned her head away. And you didn't take revenge on anyone. You just nodded calmly and put away the props in your hand. After all, according to the rules, you should start a new round of the game. With the truth from your elder brother, everyone in the room didn't dare to cheat anymore. As a result, your mother learned that the diamond necklace that disappeared when you were first recognized as a family member wasn't stolen by you. It was the fake daughter who deliberately framed you. And the son of your father's business partner wasn't offended by you at school. He was just trying to pursue the fake daughter and deliberately joined her in bullying and weighing on you. As more and more truths were revealed, your parents' expressions became more and more embarrassing. The so-called happy and perfect family was just a cover for all this ugliness. Once that veil was lifted, the ugliness was too much for them to face. Finally, they lowered their heads, and their tone of speaking to you became somewhat gentle. We didn't know about these things, they said, trying to maintain the last bit of parental dignity and regain their composure. Then they said, but you're also at fault. If it weren't for your bad temper and your refusal to get close to us and explain, how could we have misunderstood you so easily? They argued rationally, but the words they said made them blush. After venting, they looked at you with a hint of expectation, hoping that you would show some self-reflection and guilt. If you did, they would consider accepting you. It would be best if your conscience suddenly woke up, you untied them, and then you apologized to them. Only then would they not send you away and would compensate you in the future. But you didn't do that. Before you even bothered to listen to them, being solely engrossed in your game, you were already an avid gamer. No one could interrupt your blissful gaming hours. So this time you merely made a loose fist, pretending to hold a microphone and thrust it towards your mother, who was still glaring at you. Have you even been listening to us? She shrieked angrily. Yet you calmly repeated your question. I asked, did Lin Qianqian seduce my boyfriend Xiangqing first? Completely impervious to reason, your mother seemed to finally realize at this moment that you had lost your mind. She looked at the fake daughter sitting across from her, tightly bound. The latter was in floods of tears, her eyes filled with pleading. Without a doubt, after your elder brother, who had 2 of his fingers brutally broken by you, everyone present now feared your retribution, especially the fake daughter who had offended you the most Pingruli. Finally, your mother closed her eyes, as if making a certain resolve, and turned away from you. Her lips quivering, her voice trembled yet remained firm. Qianqian knew nothing. I saw that Cheng Yong liked Qianqian, so I played matchmaker. Qianqian was innocent throughout. I'm sorry he lied. You stood up, looking down at him with undisguised disappointment. You had thought he would be a shrewd player, yet he gave such a foolish answer, which made you feel rather disenchanted. However, you decided to give him one more chance. So you turned around and cast your gaze upon the fake daughter, who was weeping copiously, and asked softly, is everything he just said true? As a thunderbolt crashed down, the bright lightning illuminated the chainsaw you had just picked up. Suddenly, the fake daughter went berserk, pointing at your mother across the way and shouting, yes, it's her. It's all this old hag's doing. The thunder rumbled continuously outside, but the fake daughter's accusation was even more shocking, leaving your mother stunned on the spot. It's all this old hag's fault. I didn't want to do it. I've already said that Cheng Yug is my sister's boyfriend, and I couldn't break my sister's heart. She said, my sister, you're not good enough for such a wonderful man like Cheng Yu, and forced him on me. The fake daughter's face was deathly pale, yet she still managed to kneel on the ground, looking up at you with an ingratiating smile. Out of the corner of your eye, blood started to seep from the wound in her pierced hand again, but she seemed oblivious, her eyes filled only with the desire to survive. Ignoring her parents' enraged expressions, she crawled towards you, trying to cling to your leg. On that once delicate and innocent face, there was the same cruel smile as yours. Kill them, sister. Kill those 2 old fools and avenge your past self. She said that everything in the past was their doing. They thought that since you had been out there for so long, you must have been sullied, and they were afraid you disgraced them, so they instigated me to target you. Sister, I was just their pawn. The truly evil ones are those 2 old fools. I didn't really want to treat you like this. Every day in the past I was miserable. When she reached the emotional part of her speech, she even choked up, with tears streaming down her face, yet unable to hide the greed in her eyes. Indeed, if she could incite the deranged you to kill your parents that night, then when the sun rose she would become the biggest beneficiary of this game. With your parents dead and you in jail, that substantial fortune would ultimately fall into the hands of her and your good-for-nothing brother. From the fake daughter's monologue, you could tell that she was also sick and tired of having to please your parents day after day. Deep down she thought your parents were nothing but old fools who deserved to die. However, you would never do such a thing. You just wanted to play the game and had no interest in becoming a murderer. According to the game rules, the fake daughter had lied and should be punished. Those evil deeds were always her own doing, and the only motive behind them was her fear that as the real daughter, you would compete with her for favor after returning to the Lin family. Looking at her mouth, which was still moving, those white and even teeth were quite alluring. You smiled, bent down to pick up the wrench on the ground and smashed it down hard. Blood spattered everywhere, and the noisy incitement turned into screams at that moment. She begged you for mercy and sought help from those around her, but your parents just watched her coldly. This time they no longer grew angry at her tears. Their current indifference was even greater than the way they had treated you in the past. After punishing the fake daughter, it was now your mother's turn. As you walked towards her step by step, there was nothing but Shintung in her eyes. In the past, she had always looked at the fake daughter with such eyes, while when looking at you it was mostly coldness and disappointment. Now she seemed to have truly become your mother. Even though the wrench in your hand was still dripping blood, she seemed not to be afraid at all. In the past she didn't love you. She preferred and trusted the fake daughter she had raised. At that time your meekness seemed like cowardice in her eyes, and your candor seemed vulgar. No matter what you did, she could only see your flaws. But now she felt sorry for you. Although the driving force that made her quickly step into the role of your mother came from her fear of you and the fake daughter's betrayal, now in her eyes, you had gone crazy because you had been wronged and suffered in the past, and your cruelty was out of necessity. She had seen through the true nature of the fake daughter and was even disappointed in her own son, who had sold his own sister to human traffickers. Even though it was you who had been hurting people, she still thought you were good. She was ready to love you. She looked at you, her eyes growing ever gentler, and her voice became soft. She called you baby, and softly whispered your name. Yoshua, Mom already knows the truth. Qianqian was in the wrong in the past. Mom is sorry. In an ordinary angsty romance novel, a sincere apology from parents who had always misunderstood their child could often make the female protagonist change her mind in time, and a happy ending at this point would not be out of the question. You looked at her expectant face. She was so nervous that she involuntarily clenched her hands. Seeing that you had stopped, your father quickly chimed in. However, compared to your mother, who genuinely wanted to reconcile with you, he, who was thoroughly frightened, spoke with much less sincerity. He was quick to shift the blame. It was that Lin Qianqian who caused all this trouble. Your mom and I have always wanted to treat you well from the very beginning, Yoshua. Let go of us now and we can sit down and talk things through, clear up all the misunderstandings. We'll definitely treat you well from now on. In order to sway you, he even abandoned his own son, who was still glaring at you, and vowed that from now on, you would be the only daughter in the Lin family, and all his wealth would be yours. At that moment it seemed as if everyone loved you. But you didn't need love. After all, as mentioned at the very beginning of the story, you were a mental patient. You just wanted to play games with them now, and since they had all broken the rules, punishing two people simultaneously required you to stop and think carefully about what different punishments to give them to make it truly exciting. However, your pensive look caused them to misunderstand. In an instant, confidence returned to your father's face, that shrewd old fox who had long been seasoned in the business world. He was certain that you had softened your heart and been deeply swayed by the conditions he had proposed. While feeling pleased with himself, there was also a hint of disdain in his eyes. Women are so soft-hearted. They're always making a fuss over emotions. That's what he was thinking. In the past, he hadn't been blind to the fake daughter's Shanghai of you. He had just turned a blind eye. These domestic squabbles were, in his view, the domain of women. He was already exhausted from his battles in the business world. As long as these matters didn't reach his ears and bother him, he didn't care who got wronged or who became severely depressed. In fact, he didn't care about his daughter's existence at all. After all, he already had a son who would inherit his wealth in the future. Whether the daughter was real or fake, she was just a vase raised for the purpose of a marriage alliance. He had never paid much attention to vases. Just like at this moment, when he saw that you were moved by a few conciliatory words from your parents, the smile on his face spread wide. The next second, having decided on the punishments, you raised your head, wearing the same smile, but one filled with mockery and contempt, as if looking at the lowest of insects. When your parents saw this, their pupils dilated in shock. Your mother realized something was amiss. Her trembling voice didn't even manage to form a complete sentence before the wrench in your hand came crashing down on her head. Your mother's scream rang out suddenly and then stopped abruptly. Your father fell to the ground, a gash on his head from which blood was still flowing, and your mother fainted from fright. Indeed, the most primitive means were the most satisfying. You silently commended yourself and looked around the scene with satisfaction. Perfect. Everyone had received their just desserts. However, it seemed that your parents were temporarily unable to participate in the next round of the game. So your gaze returned to your brother and the fake daughter. The moment their eyes met yours, the hostility in their eyes turned to fear. You thought of the system in your head. The system said that your ultimate goal in coming to this world was to make all of them regret what they had done to you in the past. So you crouched down in front of your brother and asked, "Brother, do you regret it?" He glared at you, his tightly clenched lips trembling. It seemed he wanted to say something tough, but in the end he burst into tears. Then you turned your gaze to the fake daughter and asked, "Do you regret it?" With 3 teeth missing, she nodded eagerly. "I was wrong." Tears mixed with blood foam spilled from her mouth. She looked extremely pitiful now, but when you looked at her, you couldn't help but think of how pitiful the original you had been when bullied at school. The original you hadn't just lost 3 teeth. You had once been held down in the school restroom and had your entire chin broken. Back then he lay there on the floor, helpless. Blood-flecked foam mingled with tears, which he swallowed down his throat. With the reasons for his beatings being so varied and numerous, he couldn't even recall the pretext those wealthy brats used that day to justify their actions. Were they punishing the thieving maid's daughter? Or was it because the fake daughter's crush had smiled at the original you? When the class teacher who used to stand up for justice was still around, the original you didn't have it quite so bad. But it wasn't long before that young and righteous female teacher vanished from the school. After all, the school principal was the father of the fake daughter's best friend. Lost in these memories, you suddenly found the game utterly dull. At the moment, the fake daughter was crying hysterically, constantly repenting to you and spilling out all the things she'd done in the past, including covering for her father and his mistress in front of your mother. Your mother, who had been scared into a faint by you, just then regained consciousness. Upon hearing these words, she first froze, then broke down into sobs herself. Her wails were no less intense than those of her terrified eldest son. As she cried, she cursed the fake daughter, calling her ungrateful, lamenting that she'd misjudged her all these years. She berated and regretted, realizing she had 2 daughters. One was a villain, and the other they'd driven to madness. She was filled with remorse, thinking that if only she'd shown more concern for her biological daughter, talked to her more, things wouldn't be like this now. Another person was now filled with regret, yet you felt no elation. That thing called the system had told you before that the regret and belated love of these people were what the angsty romance novel's female protagonist desired most, what the audience longed to see. For girls who didn't have a happy childhood, love was a precious treasure they could never obtain in their entire lives. Love was more important than anything else. Moreover, they were supposed to possess excellent moral character. To maintain their purity, they shouldn't retaliate even when hurt. Instead, they should endure silently and keep sacrificing for everyone. Only in this way could they finally, at the end of their trials, earn the guilt and regret of others, as if such remorse could erase all the previous pain. But even now, you still couldn't fathom what good this regret did. And this so-called love didn't make things any more interesting for you. Rather than being loved, you preferred to make your fists stronger. You wondered if you'd been going about it the wrong way. So you turned your gaze once again to your brother, who had just stopped crying. According to the system, for the so-called atonement phase to be truly satisfying, the person who had hurt you the most had to express regret and love for you. You reflected that all the original you's misfortune stemmed from being sold to human traffickers by her own brother at the age of 4. Thus you solemnly asked, "Brother, do you love me?" Upon hearing this, the tears that your brother had just stopped shed came streaming back. He thought you were still playing a game with him, that all this was still a test. Too afraid to lie again, he cried out, "I love Chantian. I have feelings for her that go beyond sibling love. I want her. She promised to be with me after getting rid of you. I'm sorry. Please spare me." These words stunned your mother into silence, and even your father, who had been feigning unconsciousness, couldn't help but open his eyes and start cursing. A stream of invectives like beast and short-sighted fool poured out of his mouth. Yet you could vaguely understand that your father's anger stemmed from the belief that his son should have a better future. This mindset might not be pure love, but it was certainly closer to love than hurting someone and then repenting. After all, endless forbearance and toy-wrong led nowhere. That night you pondered deeply. Behind you, your family had forgotten about you. They hurled insults at each other, blamed and attacked one another. Immersed in your thoughts, you as a mentally ill person had never thought so much before. Your head felt like it was about to explode. The system took this opportunity to reappear. When it saw the chaotic scene, it wailed towards the heavens. "This is a disaster." But the next second it exclaimed in surprise, "They've all met the criteria. Whether it's the regret level or the love level. No, it's not really love. It's mostly fear and awe. Under the instinct for survival, this awe has been automatically transformed into love. My goodness, host. Now they all love you." It was as if it had discovered a new world. It couldn't comprehend why the female protagonist could complete these tasks while still alive, especially since they had hurt her so deeply before without ever feeling guilty. You thought for a moment and calmly told it. The key might not lie in the female protagonist being hurt, but in them getting hurt themselves. People are like that. They never understand pain until it strikes them directly. So trying to awaken the conscience of the Jahidra with one's own suffering is a foolish thing. Even a madman like me, who's often not in his right mind, thinks it's absurd. You and the system faced each other in silence, sitting there until dawn. Behind you, the once harmonious family was far from quiet. They unleashed every vicious word they could think of at one another. Eventually, your brother, who had once been known as a dutiful son, even threatened your parents, saying that once he was rescued, he would seize their power and kick them out of the house. In that instant, something that had been sustaining your father seemed to vanish, and he completely collapsed. Finally, by the end of the night, your boyfriend, who hadn't received any news from the fake daughter, came looking for her. This time, he was smarter and brought dozens of bodyguards. Even so, he was shocked by what he saw inside. He had expected to find you subdued by your family, but instead, it was your family who had been dealt with by you. He became even more afraid to meet your gaze and didn't even dare to show concern for the fake daughter, as if fearing your revenge. He fled in a hurry, ignoring her cries for him. Nevertheless, the bodyguards did their duty and rescued your family members. After enduring a night of torment and being covered in wounds, the family could no longer care for one another as they used to. The father learned that his son wanted to usurp his power and be with his stepsister. The mother discovered her husband's infidelity, and that her daughter and son had been accomplices. The brother realized that his stepsister had been stringing him along, flirting with both him and his sister's boyfriend. And the stepsister cursed them all, saying they were good for nothing and couldn't protect her. In just one night, the former harmony was shattered. Family members became strangers, and lovers seemed like enemies. They remained silent, filled with hatred for one another, and no one mentioned sending you back to the ancestral house for judgment. As you expected, they didn't call the police. The family went to the hospital to have their injuries examined. Despite their severe wounds, they still wanted to settle the matter privately. They arranged for a psychiatric evaluation for you, and upon getting the results, they sent you to a mental hospital. When you left, only your mother showed any reluctance. She told you she was going to get a divorce but would wait for you no matter what, vowing to be your mother again once you recovered. You thought her words were ridiculous and just sneered at her. As for the others, they couldn't wait for you to disappear forever. But they also drifted apart and could never go back to the way things were. And the person they dreaded most was still you. After all, while they only plotted against each other secretly, you were the one who would actually bind them together and harm them. What they didn't realize was that as a mentally ill person, escaping from a mental hospital was one of your specialties. Moreover, now that you had a psychiatric diagnosis, you were invincible. In the rest of your life, you would be like a ghost, randomly appearing beside any of them, disrupting the peaceful lives they had Halburongyi rebuilt. No one could do anything to stop you because they were the ones who had driven you mad, and they would be tormented for all eternity. As for who you were, of course you were a mentally ill person, and you had been in the previous world too. Wherever there was an angsty romance novel's female protagonist, there you would be. This was all because they wanted to create a hellish environment for the female protagonist, while also demanding flawless moral character from her. They demanded purity and meekness, not allowing even a hint of strength or resistance. A lamb living among wolves was not supposed to fight back or show any anger. This was a fallacy, a violation of human nature, yet it deceived many. Gradually, more and more girls were expected to live up to such standards. And so, you were born. You were the manifestation of their negative emotions. They called you a madman, but sometimes you felt incredibly lucid. When hurt, you believed in giving as good as you got. This was the first lesson you wanted to teach everyone. You were the anger, the wildness, the unrefined side of girls. You embodied all the traits that made them fall short of being the perfect sacrifice. You were a madman, but you fought your way through with your fists. What you sought wasn't others' love, but respect and fear. You wanted to stand on equal ground with them and converse, even if it meant getting bloodied in the process. You were the true female protagonist. The end.